Welcome to the first episode of True Crime Garage Off the Record. This is your captain speaking. In this episode, we talk a lot about the case of Amy Mihaljevic. If you haven't listened to that episode, it's episode number 22. All of our old episodes are available through the Stitcher app for free. Why? Because Stitcher is freaking awesome. This conversation happened after the recording of the Kendrick Johnson case. The beers were flowing, and I got about 2 hours of this conversation. So this conversation will come out in about 4 parts. Hope you enjoy. Cheers, mates. Sipping on some bourbon.
Well, I got to tell you about this, Captain, because here's the thing. You know, when you and I covered the Amy Mihaljevic cold case,
probably our best show. I'm not actually on that episode, but hey, and maybe that's why it's our best show. To be honest.
Well, I got to thinking about this last week because I drove up to the Cleveland area. And I was having lunch with our good friend James Renner. And
bro date.
The thing about it was, as I was driving up there, a couple things occurred to me. One, I realized that, back then we were only doing one episode. We rarely would we cover a case for more than one episode back then. And
those were the glory days.
Well, you know what? At the time, maybe it felt right. I think looking back, I would have said back then, Amy's only one episode. Well, I started digging into her case again because that's one of my, you call them red light cases. That's one of my red light cases that I've been dragging around with me for years. And it's always with me.
But everybody's calling it red light cases now. I started a thing. So, just so you know. I think I was watching Nancy Grace the other day, and she was like, my red light case now is, so I'm just saying, everybody's using this. You jump on board.
Well, I am. I'm fully on board.
Mm-hmm. So you're driving to Cleveland. Just take 71 all the way up.
Well, I kind of got to start back a little bit. Okay.
You're going to tell me how you showered and...
Yeah, but no, I knew I was going up there in advance. So I had some free time and I couldn't help myself. I started looking into Amy's case again. Mm-hmm. And I got more angry and more angry as I do when I look into this case for many reasons. And, I'll go through those later. But
really should talk to somebody, though, about your anger issues.
No, well, knowing that I was going up to... Okay, so Renner calls me and he says, look, can you come up? I want to ask you some questions about podcasting. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, no problem. And I'm like, first off, I'm like, I don't think he's contacted the right guy. He really should have contacted the captain. But
it's so funny though, because the amount I still get a ridiculous amount of either hate mail or crap on our blog or iTunes, and it's like, we should just put a disclaimer, like, the show is produced by the dumb guy, right?
Do you want me to agree with you here? Because I would feel like I'd be confirming you're the dumb guy if I'm like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I'm good at all the other stuff other than talking, right? So
I disagree.
So Renner calls you.
He wanted to talk about podcasting, and you know me, I always have an agenda. I'm like, this is perfect. I have a couple of Amy Mihaljevic questions that I want to ask him. Once I get there face to face, he won't be able to get out, and I will. He'll be forced to talk to me.
Right.
So I drive up there.
Wait, hold on. My favorite thing is when Renner came all the way from Cleveland to. So we're in the studio in Columbus. Excuse me. And first of all, he gets out of his car. He's looking at both of us like, wow, this is one crazy motley crew, right? And then we're in the studio, this super nice studio, Sonic Lounge Studios. Check them out online. But we're in this super nice studio, and Renner's looking at you funny. And then at some point you say to him, yeah, I've been to see you speak before. Oh, really? And then all of a sudden he goes, he looks at you and he goes, oh, yeah, you followed me out to my car. You followed me all the way out to the parking lot.
Yeah. Hey, I bought a book that day.
Well, you did.
And you know what? I was very polite. There was a long line of people that wanted to buy his book at that particular. I've actually spoke to him at multiple things before we started doing this.
Right.
But that one particular incident, yes, I did follow him out to the street there. He was too smart to like walk to his car. Right. He just walked to an open area and kind of stood there. Anyway, but I was very polite because I could have been the first one in line to buy the book. And I said, I'm going to put myself last in line because I have a couple questions to ask this guy. That way I don't hold up anybody else's time. Right. And he sells a book to all these people. I was being polite to him, polite to them. I'm a superhero. Okay,
maybe in your eyes. But the way I view that is that you're actually being extra creepy because you're thinking, I'm going to utilize a lot of this guy's time and I'm going to be pretty creepy doing it.
No.
You had preconceived creepy notions.
Well, at these things, okay, so I've been to a bunch of these with different authors, and the way that it always goes down is this. So an author, if it's a true crime presentation, they give more of a presentation where they'll kind of go through they'll go through the crime. Mm-hmm. They might go through some public theories, some other people's theories. And usually they will go into their theory a bit, but not too much because they want to sell you the book. And then afterwards, they'll kind of open it up to a Q&A, and then there's followed by a session where the author will typically sit down at a desk or a table somewhere, and you can form a line with the intent of, the intention is that you're going to buy a book. Mm-hmm. And the author will then write, autograph the book, maybe write a little funny note to you or something in the book, and
take a shower.
But during that time, you're allowed to ask questions. You're allowed to present a question to them. And
so you weren't being
no. If I were going to ask him a question, this was the place to do it.
Right. Okay, so back to the story. So you're going up to Cleveland, so you know that he's going to be stuck with you, going out to lunch.
Yeah, he said, "Do you want to grab a bite to eat?" And I said, "Okay."
Okay, so where did you eat?
I don't remember. It was some. It was just some like lunch place. Like I don't know. Like
well, that narrows it down, officer.
No, I think he picked Moosehead Saloon or something like that. So it's like
that
it was
sounds
like
good.
Yeah, and they had good food, and I'm sure they had great beer. But I wasn't going. It was like 11 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't drinking a beer at that time.
Sounds a lot better than Moose Knuckle.
So anyway, I go up and don't quote me. I don't remember if that's the exact name. So
I'm filming you right now.
But the thing is, so driving up there. So leaving Columbus, heading up 71 to get all the way toward Cleveland. Okay.
It's like a 2.5 hour drive.
Yeah, to this restaurant, I think it took me 2:10 to get there. Mind you, I'm on the north side of Columbus, and this was actually like Lakewood, something like that. But when you're driving up there, one thing that occurred to me, and this has occurred to me multiple times when I take that trip up to that area, is that somewhere a little more than halfway there for me anyway. Mm-hmm. When you get past the 1181 area, that's a route 1181. It always occurs to me that somewhere between here and where my final destination is for the day, there's very likely a 60 to 70-year-old child killer that's living in this area. That's something that always comes across my mind when making that journey.
Well, might be still living. might have moved. Is what you're saying, though, right? Or do you think they're still there?
I just get a feeling. That the person's probably. I get some strange feeling when I start getting toward that area and driving along. I get angry about it, and I start looking at sheds and things as I pass them, turning strange eye to them.
Right, but this crime took place a long time ago.
1989.
So, I mean, one, it's possible that this suspect would be dead or possibly has moved, to Florida or something. But you're saying your gut feeling is still there, still around.
That's just the feeling I get. But one thing that occurred to me earlier in the week before I left was that I had never discussed this with you or with James, and we didn't talk about this on the show, was there is there's a book out there called Whoever Fights Monsters, which came out, I believe, in 92.
Mm-hmm.
And it's by Robert K. Ressler, famous FBI agent. And it's a fantastic book. I highly recommend everybody pick it up. But now there's about 4 or 5 pages in that book where Robert Ressler talks about the Amy Mihaljevic case. And at this time, it's in a chapter titled What Plus Y Equals Who. Now, Amy was abducted in October of 1989. And at this time, Robert Ressler is near retirement. Well, he gives a profile regarding who he thinks took Amy.
Mm-hmm.
And he prepared this profile with another agent. This is a local agent to the Cleveland office, John Dunn. And they were also working with a man named Dick Wearns. Okay, so while he's there, he actually, I think the way that the story goes is that Ressler had to be in town for something else. And I think it was like, hey, I'll just kind of drop by. I think he's from the area.
Maybe it was just have lunch. I mean, just like you and Renner.
Yeah. I think he was given some kind of seminar, or he was taking a seminar. Anyway, he's there and he decides he's going to sit down with the local agents, and they're going to put together a profile on who they believe took Amy.
Mm-hmm.
And the profile they come up with, and I'll give you kind of the nuts and bolts of it. It's this. It's a white man, late 20s or early 30s, introverted, a loner, relatively unsuccessful, unmarried, not overly educated, but not stupid, no military service, and a propensity for spending a lot of time with kids. So as they're preparing this profile, the local agents inform Ressler that, guess what? We have a guy that is already a suspect,
mm-hmm.
and he fits that profile. So this guy, his name is Billy Strunek. So who is Billy Strunek? He's a lot of what the profile says. He's a white guy in his late 20s or early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
He's an introverted loner, relatively unsuccessful. He works at a not a grocery store, but like a kind of like a Sam's Club or something like that, where you have people buy in bulk.
Right.
Yeah, he's kind of a stock guy doing things like that. He's unmarried.
Right. And not to, put my thoughts on this too much, but as far as like the unsuccessful, late 20s, unsuccessful, right, when they're profiling these individuals, to me, this has always meant, it could be a school teacher, it could be a banker, it could be somebody with actually like a nice job, it could be a college professor. But I think the unsuccessful part would probably be, the overall umbrella of their lives, not married, no kids, not a lot of friends. Does that make any sense?
Well, no, you're right. And the thing is, one thing that people have to keep in mind is when you're looking at these profiles, so what they will typically do is they will come up with reasons to back up other thoughts that they have about the criminal. So meaning, okay, a guy this late in life, late 20s, early 30s, he's unmarried. Well, what is one reason why he might be unmarried? Because he's not successful.
Yeah, or he's so handsome and has a successful podcast that he's kind of picky.
Well, these are just they're probabilities. They're not certainties.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know, and keep in mind they're only putting together a profile with the information that they have at the time. At any time, if they're given more information or new information or better information, their profile can change.
Right.
And, you know, they're not always spot on with all these things. This is just a few FBI agents sitting down without a suspect in mind going, from our experience,
mm-hmm.
who is the type that would typically abduct a 10-year-old girl?
Mm-hmm.
Now, keep in mind, at this time, she's been gone for a while. So they're working on the probability that she's been either kept for what would be a long-term criminal plan, or
right.
she's dead by this point. She's been murdered. So they're just coming up with this profile off of what they've studied, off of what they've seen in the past.
Right.
So William Strunek, he lived in Parma Heights. He did have some kind of prior he had some kind of prior police record. And it's a little unclear about what his prior conviction was for. This is according to the Cuyahoga County's website. It says he was found guilty of disseminating material harmful to children. Now, from my readings, that typically means that pornography.
Right.
However, on the website, it doesn't give a clear account of the offense. It doesn't give the specificity or the details of that offense.
It could be like nudie mags.
That's also it's kind of a broad charge too, to be fully honest with you. It's usually not clear cut. It's not like B&E where like, all right, well, we know this guy broke in to somebody's home unlawfully or broke into a business unlawfully. Anyway, this dude is a bit of a thief. He has a history of stealing from employers, small petty crime. He's 5'6" tall, 155 pounds, and
like 5'6".
Yeah,
and this is in the 80s, so I mean 5'6" is, I mean this is a short gentleman. Maybe I shouldn't even call him gentleman, but it's a short guy.
Yeah, 5'6" would be a short guy in most decades.
Yeah.
At this time, he was living in the Fairview Park apartments. He was living in an efficiency there. Now, a loner, this guy did have a girlfriend. I think his girlfriend may have had a small child.
Well, you see that, all like single mothers should be like careful, because there are guys that will prey on single mothers to be close to their children. And have them become victims.
Yeah, and there's some people who wonder if this was a real girlfriend or not.
What does that mean? Was she plastic? Was she made out of plastic?
No, there's a chance he was probably just telling people that they had a relationship and they had no relationship.
Right.
Maybe she's just somebody that was nice to him. He worked at the BJ's Wholesale Club, and the interesting thing about him is after they're going through this profile and they're doing this profile, well, the local agents are like, hey, Bob, we got a guy that matches your profile. And by the way, he's already one of our top 5 suspects. And really the point of the profile is not really to tell you to give you a name of who did the crime.
Right.
It's more to have the investigators hone in on, if you have to prioritize, if you have to maximize your time and the efficiency of your investigation, well, then you should look at this group of people before you look at that group of people.
Mm-hmm.
So this Strunek guy, at the time,
Billy
Strunek,
okay.
yeah. So William Strunek, he goes by Billy. He's the guy that we talked about.
Sometimes when you're telling me about these guys, you'll switch between their first names and their last names. And so sometimes it's hard to keep track of who you're talking about.
Well,
so this suspect.
Yeah, and one thing I don't think that we talked about when we covered Amy's case, and it's been so long, so it's hard to remember, but they actually had what they referred to as the Amy Center, and I believe this was set up at City Hall. And it was basically a room where investigators and volunteers could go that could help in the search for Amy. Because keep in mind, she was gone for months before they found her body. So they were actively looking for her or looking for her abductor. Her mother, Margaret, would often go to this Amy Center, and she was kind of one of the people that was one of the leaders of this group.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the volunteers there was this Billy Strunek. He had volunteered his time to help in the search for Amy. Now, he did a couple of things there that called his character into question by the police. And I believe that this was first by Margaret.
Well, I'm just trying to follow you here. So you're saying Billy, the suspect, worked at the Amy Center.
Yes, as a volunteer.
As a volunteer to try to find her.
Right.
Now, I think this guy, I think you guys might have brought this guy up before, but during the interview with you and Renner. I'm not 100% sure, but go on. I wanted to make sure I'm following everything correctly.
Well, and if anybody's going, well, that doesn't make any sense that a suspect is working as a volunteer. He became a suspect after having volunteered his time at the Amy Center.
Yeah, but you see it a lot. I mean, how many cases have we covered where it's like guys that want to get involved with cases, or they find out later that they were on their radar, in the beginning, and then it was 3 years later they caught them. So I don't think that's too far-fetched.
Well, no, in most cold cases, I forget the percentage, but in most cold cases, they find that the offender that they find out years later committed the crime was already spoke to by police or was already questioned. Now, in this situation, a little bit different to the fact that sometimes these guys inject themselves into the investigation or into the search for the victim. Mm-hmm. And the reason being that John Douglas would tell you this, and Ressler would tell you this as well. Most of the time, it's not anything where they're like, "Hey, I want to be close to this investigation. I want to be a part of it." Mm-hmm. It's nothing like that. They believe that most of the time it's so that they can figure out how close the investigators are to making an arrest. Being that if they get wind that the investigators are close to their guy or onto them,
right,
then they know to get the hell out of town and to take off.
Right. Yeah. I wonder how many of them, like, I don't know if get off is the right word, but how many of them get off if they're close to an investigation and then they start hearing cops talk about a suspect that's not them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so it's like, this Billy guy sitting around, they're like, "Hey, man, we're really close to catching somebody." He's like, "Oh, shit, they might be catching me." And then they're like, "Hey, this guy, Tommy Two Finger," right?
Mm-hmm. I don't know how much anybody at the Amy Center would really know much about the investigation. The way that I think that, this is not like that they set up a task force there and they're working with the public to solve the crime. It's more or less, it's a group of volunteers, and from time to time, police officers and detectives probably walk over and check in and just say, "Hey, did any leads, anything strange? Have we heard anything?" That kind of thing.
Right, but I'm thinking about it in this manner, right? You're working this Amy Center. Cop comes in just to show face, right? Show the presence of police force there. More support than to actually work the case. When you go up and you start asking questions, doesn't seem that odd, right?
Right.
And so, like you said, I mean, maybe they don't really know tons about the case, but if you are involved somehow, you can't just go into the police department and go, "Hey guys, so I'm kind of interested in this Amy case, and any word?" You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like you do that to take your chances, and maybe you don't hear stuff from time, every day, but you'd hear some stuff from time to time, which would, be some kind of, I would assume, and this is maybe just me being, assuming and making an ass out of you and you, but I wonder how much of these individuals, if they're injecting themselves into the cases, how much thrill they get from even just hearing people talk about the case, and just hearing a phrase like, well, we have no solid lead, or we have no solid suspects. I mean, there's probably some, and I'm sure the FBI has done some work on what kind of psychological rush I would think that would be. They'd probably get some kind of high off of it,
Oh yeah,
almost like
they watch the news, they clip the newspaper articles out, that sort of thing. But
strange though, man.
So, but the reason why this guy came onto their radar and became a suspect was, I believe it was Margaret, Amy's mother, that tells the police, "Hey, this guy he's a volunteer, but he's strange."
Mm-hmm.
And he had at one time gave Margaret a hug that she said was awkward, that he maybe held on to her too long, that he had also mailed.
He licked her ear.
Something to Margaret in the mail that it was I believe it was a card along with 2 pins, like a decorative pin or something, that he mailed to her, and he mailed her 2 of them, and one was for her and one was for Amy when she returned home. So he also offered to help the Mihaljevics out in any way, and one suggestion he had for her was that he could come and clean their home. So that's a little odd. I mean, okay, so this guy, Bill, so he could just be a very nice guy that actually means well, but he's just very bad in social situations. But you would assume, again, making an ass out of you and you, but you assume that an individual that was bad at social situations would not put himself into social situations. You know what I mean? That I think you just made an ass out of you, because that's assuming that someone bad at social situations is aware that they're bad at social situations.
No, I get that.
Most people that are bad in social situations have no clue.
That's true.
That they're bad in these situations.
But if you have this introvert, right? I mean, that's where he becomes more suspicious to me. You got this introvert, this guy that doesn't seem like he has a lot of friends. He's spending a bunch of his time at this Amy Center. He goes out of his way to send gifts to their house, and they're just small pins or whatever. But then on top of that, you say, I can help your family out if you need to. Well, the weird hug with him licking her ear, possibly whispering in her ear.
He didn't lick her ear. He didn't whisper in her ear.
But I find the chore that he claims he could help out with to be odd. Because if it's, hey, I can mow your grass. That's typical. Hey, I'll take some weight off your husband's shoulders. I'll mow the grass. I can show up. And that's the thing that you don't have to be there for. I can just show up, mow, and leave.
Mm-hmm.
And if he offered that to me, not so weird. I want to clean your house. What room do you want to go through? What are you trying to find? This is where my mind is going.
Well, yeah, of course, and that's why he gets onto the police radar. Had he not done any of these things, he would not have. If he was just another volunteer, he wouldn't have been on their radar at all.
Right. Thanks for listening. Thanks for telling a friend, and make sure you check out truecrimegarage.com. Be good, be kind, and don't litter.